we've got two people who answered the call that we put out for people who just wanted to show some work in this setting. David is one, and Jez is the other. And this section is a section that, well, I've decided fairly recently that we would dedicate it to a friend of the previous event that I used to put on, If Wet, Richard Windley, who sadly passed away in the last 12 months. Richard read about If Wet before it existed in the local newspaper, and he came to the very first If Wet armed with a musical instrument that he wanted to show. And almost without fail, he came to every other If Wet to do this section, where he brought one of his many wondrous creations along. He was based in Herefordshire, in Hereford, and I've had the pleasure of going to his house. And when you turn up at Richard's house, for one thing, you're greeted by a hand in a box at the door that when you take, it's a wooden carved hand, and when you take the hand, it shakes your hand back and you're welcomed into the house. And then the house full of various instruments. He's actually was a professional hurdy-gurdy maker. He was. But he was a great maker of all sorts of experimental musical instruments, and we were very honoured to have him come and do those parts of If Wet throughout. We've got David's come with a piece that he's going to explain to you, which is the nature of this call is that, I mean, as alluded to by Sarah, it's a fairly niche area we're in. The nature of the call is much more broad than turn up with a mechanical pedal-powered musical instrument or whatever. It's open to anyone who has anything that they want to show in front of an audience, basically. And so this is quite different to what we've had on stage so far. I'm going to let David explain to you. I need to get a microphone for David, so if you'll excuse me.
There's no camera. This is a Boss RC300 loop station. Anybody who is into these things. Essentially what it does is play loops that you give it. Similar kind of way that we've seen with these contraptions, but it's obviously a digital setup. What I've tried to do is get rid of the beat aspect of this, create 3 loops which are independent and don't follow a time signature. So it's a bit like having 3 old-fashioned tape machines running, but there's hopefully no fixed pulse for them. If you want to join in, if you can breathe, which hopefully you all can, don't do this if you don't feel comfortable. But what I'd like to try and do is just to breathe, find your rhythm, just breathe in and out, and then just find any kind of sound that you can make with your mouth closed. Okay? So you're not trying to sing, you're not trying to do anything like that. You're just trying to basically hum. So if you want to take just a deep breath in and let it out, and as you breathe out, you just in the old-fashioned concept. Don't worry if you don't want to join in, that's fine. But I'm interested in the idea of participation, but really inspired by what Sarah said about this idea of music belonging with professionals, and then we come along and listen to what they do, but we don't really join in. So this is just an experiment really in the idea of seeing what happens maybe if we if we don't try and concentrate on singing a song or performing, we just kind of go with this environment. This amazing building, so old and so beautiful, and obviously used for worship and so on. So it's just that idea of breathing and making sound, but don't worry about what the sound is. Just whatever note it is, that's fine, but maybe we'll find a point where there's a bit of music happening from you rather than just me. Okay. So standard electric guitar, little amp, and the looper pedal I've just shown you. Okay.
So I thought I was doing quite a good job getting rid of the computer out of my life, but clearly after what Sarah said, I should be getting rid of all this electronic stuff. Okay, so I moved to the area near Pershore during COVID, and a bit unaware really of what is going on in the area, and a colleague of mine sort of passed me Sam's details on, and I thought this would be interesting, if nothing else, to come and watch what you guys were doing. So I'll briefly explain the concept behind these two bits of kit. So the idea initially was I was working in an ambisonic multi-speaker environment, and I built a lap or a tabletop string instrument, guitar, if you want to call it that. And literally, I mean, it's changed a little bit now, but everything was hand built on it. I cut it out of a piece of wood, shaped it. The only thing that I managed to borrow the use of a lathe for were the original pickups. I just built them, and these little mushroom things that a friend of mine works in industry with industrial diamonds, and he put a little diamond in the top of each of them for me, so that was a nice finish to it. But one thing I did do with it originally was I built some bullet pickups and one for each string, so that I could send each string out individually to a mixing desk and affect them. It's not an instrument I really want to play like a guitar, just use it for a sound source. And I was lucky enough to perform it up in Derby a number of years back, where I had an ambisonic engineer who used the space in, I think we had a 40 speakers set up in the room, and he just moved a semi-improvised piece that I did around the room, and that was amazing. And then I moved on to try and build something with electronics that would then complement the two. So visually, the shape of the guitar is the shape of the sides of this. They're both built out of ash. And I was working at, I was studying. I went to school late in life. I went back to university, and I was studying at De Montfort in Leicester. And I came up with the idea of building this to be able to run 6 strings individually through it and manipulate sound, which sort of worked for a while, but then the issues that I had were I couldn't really afford the speakers to do this anywhere else and the setup. So I've put a standard pickup in here. I don't really use this section anymore. If I take it out, it's going to look a bit weird. And the concept in here was really to self-build all the electronics. So it's using old chips, CMOS chips they're called, and circuitry that was made popular by a guy called Nicholas Collins, I believe, amongst others. And it's using manipulating some of the ideas he had and messing with his ideas. So at the bottom I've got a sequencer that I've built. The elements in here that are working at the moment, I've then got a pitch circuitry here that I'm running the sequencer into at the moment. And then this is 6 simple oscillators that are fed into a flanging unit that has been hacked and circuit bent. So you're just changing the circuitry. And the functionality of it is that I like knobs and buttons and flashing lights, clearly. But the idea is that everything's got certain little hacks in it, and where cables are taken off part of the circuitry and would normally route to somewhere else. But what I've done is I've hacked these to either switches or banana plugs, and then these plugs then have different resistors inside the plug. So the idea is that I'm changing the circuitry by altering resistors, and I think if I remember right, resistors they limit the circuitry and can regulate it. So the idea is by performing and moving those around, I can get the circuitry that I've built to move in a different way, shall we say, and make different sounds. And the same with the switches. Some of these, they're just hacks from bits of kit that run to these. Some of them I can move across from different bits, different parts of it to another by using the hacks, a bit like they do with modular systems that have become very fashionable in the last few years. And that was really the whole concept behind putting it together and working with it. So I use with this. It seems that fans are used widely in this sort of setup. So yeah, again, flashing lights, and I use springs to a degree, not to the lovely degree that we've got going here, but just to force sounds out of the pickup and restrict the strings in some ways. Little vibrating bits and pieces that will move around the strings, E-bows, things like that. What I'll do is I'll just do a very short sound rather than perform it as such, just show you some of the sounds that I can get out of it and use across it. And some of them are quite coarse, some of them are quite ambient in some ways, but the idea would be to put them together and try and move a piece of music with yourselves. But one of the things I like is, especially with cheap bits of kit like this, you put them near any of this, that's going near the pickup, and I love the sound that makes in itself. I also tend to use things, just anything I can put my hands on really. Some of it could be quite coarse, but I love contact mics as well. To use this on, they like you're talking about nature as well. I find wood is the same, and we want to pick guitars, violins, everything. They're made with certain woods, and they give off that different sounds. But even a thick piece of wood with different grain and stuff can just come up with some really interesting sounds. And then this being slightly more less ambient, to say times. So it's a basic sequence that I can affect. And I've got speed control. Now I have to be careful because the two resistor cables I've got here, I know I'm going to overpower this and it might scream at me. So. And then this, at present, I've got running into the pitch, which will scream at me. And the oscillators that run into this unit. These are some of the hacks that I've got. So they tend to, it's not one switch for one sound. What tends to happen is, depending on how I've got the standard settings on this effect player, we can get different sounds from the hacks that come into the idea is to be able to make actually run that as a performance, but really just wanted to show you what's inside the box, really.